Tumtum and Nutmeg, A Seaside Surprise, Chapter 5. It was only when lunch was over and they had run back upstairs to their bedroom that Arthur was able to tell Lucy what had happened. "I felt something tickling my leg. Then when I looked in my pocket, the map wasn't there," he said. "Something took it." "But what?" Lucy said. "It must have been something very small." Arthur shuddered. "It felt like a spider," he said. "It moved very fast, that's for sure, and it obviously knew what it was looking for. It went straight for my pocket, then shot off like a bullet." "A spider? That's impossible," Lucy replied. "Spiders can't read maps." Arthur shrugged. "Maybe it was a mouse then." Lucy shook her head in bewilderment. "But mice can't read maps either." The children felt very confused. Someone had taken the map, that was for sure. But whoever could it have been? "We'd better write Nutmeg a letter, warning her that the map's been stolen," Arthur said. "If there's someone else after the treasure, then she might know who they are." Lucy agreed, so they found a piece of paper and wrote a hurried note. "Dear Nutmeg, Arthur was looking after the map while we were having lunch, but then something ran up his leg and dived into his pocket and stole it. He didn't see what it was, but it felt like a mouse. And now they've been looking for the treasure too, but we'll make sure to find it first. Love, Arthur and Lucy." They folded the letter in half and propped it against the lamp on Lucy's bedside table, where they had found Nutmeg's letter that morning. "She'll know what to do," Lucy said, feeling reassured. "I hope so," Arthur said. "But now let's go back to the beach and start looking again. We've still got a lot of caves to explore." They ran downstairs, but Uncle Jeremy was waiting for them in the hall. "How would you like to come fishing?" he asked brightly. He was holding some rods in a canvas bag stuffed with tiny tins and reels. The children flinched. Normally they would have loved to go fishing, but this afternoon they had treasure to find. "Come on, jump in the car," Uncle Jeremy said, grabbing his straw hat. "We might catch something for dinner." "We'll have to go with him," Lucy whispered, fearing Uncle Jeremy would be hurt if they refused. "But what if someone else finds the treasure while we're gone?" "They won't," Lucy said firmly. "We'll only be away for a few hours. No one's going to find the cave as quickly as all that." But little did the children know, General Marchmouse had already set off, and now he was clambering down the steps to the beach with the map clutched tightly in his paw. "I shall find the teeth first, and just let everyone try to stop me," he muttered. He jumped off the bottom step into the sand and stared around him in astonishment. He had never been on a beach before, and it was a thrilling sight. There were huge strands of seaweed coiled like snakes, and exotic shells colored pink and blue and green. There was a ridge after ridge of golden sand stretching as far as the eye could see. The beach may have seemed small to Arthur and Lucy, but to General Marchmouse, it was like a desert. He took out his map and noted in which direction the rocks must be. And when he looked through his field glasses, he could just see them, black and hazy in the distance. He tucked the map back into his breast pocket and set off toward them. It was a long way, and the sun was very hot. Soon his throat felt parched, and he could feel the sweat trickling down his shirt. On and on he tramped, until eventually a dark shadow fell on him, and when he looked up, there they were, a range of huge black mountains towering out of the sand. He took out the map again, trying to work out which one was Stargazer. "It must be that one," he cried excitedly, gazing up at the biggest mountain of them all, and when he saw how steep it was and craggy it was, his heart soared. The general loved danger, and he was sure to find it here. At the base of the rock there was a smooth, flat boulder about a foot high. He climbed onto it, pulling himself up by a strand of seaweed. When he got to the top, he saw the rock pool, and then even the brave General Marchmouse felt a pang of fear. It stretched before him like a vast lake, and it looked horribly cold and slimy. On the far side of the pool, he could see the opening of a small black cave. He knew it must be the grotto that Lord Seamouse had told them about, where the secret tunnel began. But how would he reach it? It was much too far to swim. "I need a boat," he thought, and he started searching around the rock pool for something he could use. Then suddenly he saw a popsicle stick lodged under a pebble. "That would make a fine surfboard," he thought. He tugged it free and lowered it into the pool. Then he slithered down onto it, so that he was lying flat on his tummy, and pushed himself off from the bank. He waited until the stick had stopped wobbling. Then he dipped his paws into the pool and started to paddle. The water was icy cold, and he couldn't see below the surface. He didn't like it one bit. but he kept his eyes fixed on the cave and paddled on as fast as he could. At least there's no sign of the Krabby Crab, he thought. Lord Seamouse was probably making that up. But when he was halfway across the pool, he felt a sudden tremor beneath the water. Then all at once, a huge pink beast reared up in front of him. The general lay on his popsicle stick, quivering like jelly. It was the pinkest, most hideous creature he had ever seen. It had claws like nutcrackers, and a huge pink head with monstrous pink eyes goggling straight at him. The Krabby Crab, the general trembled. The Krabby Crab fixed him with a very crabby stare. Then it reached out with a long pink claw and grabbed him around the stomach. "Put me down!" the general squealed, but the Krabby Crab just squeezed him tighter. The general saw his life flash before him. He thought he was going to be gobbled up in one bite. The Krabby Crab was drawing him closer and closer. Its crabby mouth was gaping. "My pistol!" the general thought desperately, but he had left it at home. Then he suddenly remembered his slingshot. With a thumping heart, he fished it from his pocket and loaded it with his last peppermint. He had catapulted many a beetle before, but never a beast as big as this. He aimed very carefully, for he knew he could not afford to miss it. Thwang went the elastic. Then thwack went the peppermint, as it hit the Krabby Crab smack in the eye. The beast reared backward, giving a roar of pain. He loosened his claws and let the general fall, plop, into the pool. The general kicked vigorously, gasping for air as the seaweed and the black water swirled around him. Then he felt something clunk against his shoulder, and when he looked up, he saw the popsicle stick floating beside him. He hauled himself onto it and started thrashing fiercely back across the pool, not daring to turn around. When he reached the bank, he hauled himself out of the water. Then he raced to the edge of the rock and slid back down the seaweed onto the sand. And then he ran and ran faster than he'd ever run before. Puff, pant, stumble, wheeze. On and on he fled until Stargazer and the rock pool and the Krabby Crab were all far behind him. Then finally he collapsed, panting, in the sand. Everything was suddenly very quiet. All the general could hear was his heart going thump. His backpack was soaking wet, and his clothes were covered in slime. "The map!" he yelled, fearing he had lost it. But when he felt in his pocket, it was still there. He fished it out carefully, for the paper was soggy, and he held it in the breeze to dry. It was late in the afternoon, and still a long walk home to Seaview Hollow. He felt very wretched. He was cold and hungry, and knew Tumtum would be furious with him when he got back. He staggered to his feet and started trudging miserably through the sand, but the beach seemed to go on and on forever. "I must be nearly there," he thought, when he had been walking for a very long time. But there was still no sign of the steps in the wall. He looked through his field glasses, but all he could see was sand, never-ending sand. "Oh dear," he said, "I'm lost." That is the end of Chapter 5.